This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show. Hypocrisy, hardliners, and Hormuz. Iran has officially rejected Donald Trump's 15-point proposal for peace. Tehran is demanding reparations instead. Reparations from the United States for starting what Iran calls a war of choice. Iran also demanding that the United States cede total control of the Strait of Hormuz, which the United States pretty much already has done. I'll have more on why, despite Trump sending more troops to the region, there's pretty much nothing he can do to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without massive American bloodshed. And I'll have more on the disrespectful tone towards Trump coming from the Iranian leadership. As we get deep into the fourth week of this war, it's starting to look as if Iran believes it holds all the cards, that Iran, not Trump, is winning, and that Iran is starting to feel Trump is desperately looking for an exit strategy. The reports are that Iran never came to Donald Trump asking to talk peace, that Trump, as usual, just lied and said they came to him. The White House talking tough because that's all it knows how to do. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt telling reporters on Wednesday, Iran is making a big mistake by not accepting the deal offered by Trump. But reports are that America, the Persian Gulf states, and Israel are perilously close to running out of interceptors as Iranian missiles and drones hit deep into Israel, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. It is slowly dawning on the West that this war cannot be won from above, that boots are needed on the ground, and that's going to require some sort of congressional approval. Not so, says the White House. They say they are not going to seek a war authorization from Congress, insisting this thing is going to be over in 4 weeks. The White House and the Republican-controlled Congress insist that Trump doesn't need a war authorization until troops are in harm's way. We've already lost 13 soldiers, and Iran says it's targeting right now not just U.S. military bases, but hotels and apartment buildings throughout the Persian Gulf where our troops are being housed. The War Powers Act, it kicks in the minute Trump commits ground troops to either seize Kharg Island or launch a commando raid to seize Iran's uranium. After that, the clock starts ticking, according to law, and Trump has 60 days before he has to get permission from Congress, or the troops have to come home. Trump never wanted a ground war. He thought this could be a splendid little war that would last maybe a week. Only 12% of the American people say they support sending troops into Iran. That's according to the latest CNN poll. Trump has already asked Congress to pass a $200 billion war supplemental. With Republicans holding a 3-seat majority in the House of Representatives, Trump and Mike Johnson don't have the votes to pass that war supplemental. So if Trump launches some kind of ground invasion in the next week, theoretically, he could put enough soldiers in harm's way that it would seem politically inexpedient for enough members of Congress to say, well, I can't vote against the war supplemental now because that would endanger our troops. And that's a garbage excuse to vote for a war supplemental. But that is what Democrats did throughout the illegal invasion of Iraq. Instead of being brave and speaking the truth to their constituents and saying, the only supplemental I'm voting for is what it costs to bring our troops home, they prolong the war. They say, well, I'm against the war, but our troops are in harm's way, so they need trillions of dollars. No, they just need a couple of billion to bring them home. There is what Trump says, and there is the truth. Trump is clinically insane. He's painted himself into a corner and has no way out of this without humiliating himself and the United States. We look incredibly weak now. We are coming across as a paper tiger. Iran, despite all the devastation, despite the decapitation of its leadership, Iran appears more powerful today than it did on February 28th when Trump launched his missile attack. The United States looks much weaker now than it did on February 28th when Trump launched this unnecessary missile attack. Iran's missiles are piercing through the much celebrated defense shield that Israel, the United States, and Raytheon have spent hundreds of billions of dollars on. Well, Raytheon didn't spend hundreds of billions of dollars. They made hundreds of billions of dollars along with some other defense contractors. Israel says they're knocking out 92% of Iranian missiles and drones. But 8% is getting through. And that's enough. That's enough. Trump insists we won the war. Trump says Iran has given up its nuclear weapons ambitions. Yeah, 23 years ago in 2003. That's according to our intelligence. Trump claims the Iranians said they would hand over. They just offered, he says, they just offered to hand over control of the Strait of Hormuz to the United States if we would just stop bombing them. Iran says that's a lie. Iran says we never made that offer, and we don't want peace. They said we don't want peace. Iran says Trump is lying in order to stabilize the oil market. Meanwhile, Trump accusing the left and Democrats, and of course Iran, of spinning facts on the ground to make it look like the United States is losing, when in fact this is the greatest military achievement in American history, so says Donald Trump and his faithful liar, the alcoholic abuser of women, white Christian nationalist Pete Hegseth, whose body is covered with neo-Nazi tattoos. There are reports that Donald Trump is so demented, his daily military briefings consist of nothing more than video, 3-minute video of Iranian targets getting blown up. But blowing stuff up isn't the stuff of victory. There are now reports that the Pentagon has sent 3,000 more troops to the region. There are already combat soldiers from the 82nd Airborne who have been deployed. That's in addition to the 2,500 Marines who've been sent there over the weekend. Right now, 50,000 American soldiers are in harm's way. They're spread throughout the Persian Gulf and the nearby sea. They are all taking part in this war, and Iran is targeting them. Republican Mike Rogers is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. On Wednesday, he said he's not happy with how the war is going or how the White House is treating Congress. Coming out of a classified briefing provided by the Pentagon, Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, said the White House is making a big mistake keeping Congress out of the loop. Now remember, without passage of this $200 billion war supplemental, there's no way Trump can keep this war going. Meanwhile, there's no end to the hostilities, as this war only seems to escalate each day. Iran launching its 80th wave of drone and missile attacks Wednesday, hitting Israel as well as U.S. military bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. The Interceptors are working some of the time, but not all of the time. Israel's second front is to the north. It's in Lebanon, and that is getting bloodier as Israeli ground troops are attempting to seize all the land south of the Litani River. Close to 1,100 Lebanese civilians have been killed this month alone, with 1 million forced to flee their homes. Israel reports about 18 Israelis have been killed this month, with more than 5,000 hospitalized. Iran has gone 26 days without internet. The Iranian government has reportedly shut it down to prevent protesters from coalescing and attempting to overturn the current leadership. Iranian intelligence said on Wednesday they've cracked down on civilians, arresting several who had Starlink satellite systems. The Iranian government also announcing on Wednesday they arrested 39 people with homemade bombs and handguns who were planning attacks on the government. The Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, says the risk of the Iranian regime being toppled are non-existent. It's not going to happen. The Iranian intelligence agency, Mossad, telling Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that any Iranians who attempt to overthrow the government will be, quote unquote, slaughtered. And yet Netanyahu and Trump are openly encouraging Iranians to rise up. While Trump claims Iran is begging for peace and it's only a matter of days until he has things wrapped up over there, the Iranian government mocks him, saying, "Don't call your defeat an agreement." A spokesperson for Iran's Revolutionary Guard said, "Trump, you are fired." That's what he said. "Trump, you are fired." His name is Lieutenant Colonel Ebrahim Zolfagari. He is the Revolutionary Guard spokesperson. He went on television yesterday and said there will be no sign of your investments in the region, nor will you see the previous prices of energy and oil until you understand that stability in the region is guaranteed by the powerful hand of our armed forces, the Iranian armed forces. Someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. Trump has a problem because there's no way he can open up the Strait of Hormuz without massive bloodshed. Iranian missiles last night hit Kuwait International Airport, setting fire to a major fuel tank. Iran fired 30 drones and missiles at eastern Saudi Arabia, which holds 70% of that country's oil reserves, with nearly 2,000 fully loaded oil tankers sitting in the Persian Gulf, unable to pass the Strait of Hormuz, choking off 20% of the world's oil supply. The New York Times reporting that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is pushing Trump not to make a deal with Iran, insisting it's only a matter of days until Iran's government is toppled. Saudi Arabia, a primarily Sunni nation, is fighting for geopolitical control of the Middle East with Iran. They're diametrically opposed. Iran is a primarily Shia nation. The New York Times reports that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is talking to Trump almost every day, assuring him that this war is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape the Middle East. The Saudi government is denying what was reported in the New York Times, the Saudi government insisting they're not attempting to prolong the fighting. They want a peaceful resolution. But the New York Times reports the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is urging Donald Trump to commit U.S. ground troops and send them into battle. Boots on the ground. But where do you put them? And how many? Senator Lindsey Graham, who is demented, and I think his brain is fried from the alcohol, he is now urging Trump to seize Kharg Island, where Iran processes 90% of its oil. Graham said, "We can take it and we can hold it," adding, "Yes, there will be American casualties and bloodshed," but Graham said, "There were American casualties at Iwo Jima, too." It's amazing how willing people are to spill other people's blood. So take a look. This is the Strait of Hormuz. It's what they call in the military a kill box. On the left, north left, or the Upper left is Saudi Arabia. Then you got Qatar, largest provider of liquid natural gas, the UAE, Oman. Then you have the Strait of Hormuz. And tankers, or presumably our military, if we were going to send troops in to escort the tankers, they would have to slow down and pass through incredibly shallow water, slowing down on the curve. It's kind of like the turn Kennedy took at Dealey Plaza, when you slow down and become a sitting duck. And up on the right, the high terrain, that is the book depository building, the mountainous regions where Iran's Revolutionary Guard can fire down at the tankers. It's a kill box. It's impossible for tankers to get through without Iran's permission. And our military can't get through because all it takes is one sunken tanker or one sunken ship, U.S. military ship, and then the Strait of Hormuz is clogged indefinitely because rescue teams will not be able to get there. The Iranians will be firing short-range missiles at them. So the idea that Lindsey Graham is selling is take Kharg Island, seize the oil so that Iran has no more oil revenue. Again, 90% of Iran's oil flows through Kharg Island. The U.S., the idea being, takes Kharg Island, we steal the oil the same way we stole Venezuela, we get the profits while Iran starves. Sounds good. Unless you know geography, which apparently Lindsey Graham doesn't. Okay, so take a look at the map. Kharg Island is in the Persian Gulf. And in order to get the oil from Kharg Island out of the Persian Gulf, look where it has to go. Tankers must still pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Doesn't matter if you have the oil. If you can't get it through the Strait of Hormuz, it's worthless. This is another map, a close-up map. Persian Gulf. There you see Kharg Island right off the coast of Iran. And there's the Strait of Hormuz. Can't get the oil from Kharg Island out to the global market unless you pass through the Strait of Hormuz. People say, well, what about pipes? Pipes are not as efficient. You can run pipes through Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but pipes are not as efficient as oil tankers. So, not looking good. Not looking good. Meanwhile, we have a massive shockwave coming out of Mar-a-Lago, earth-shattering vibrations from the president's backyard. And no, Donald Trump didn't blow out his underwear with another one of his Big Mac methane blasts. No, a novice with no political experience, a Democrat, just flipped the Florida State House seat that represents Donald Trump's home district. We're talking deep, deep red turning blue Tuesday night. District 87 went blue with a massive 22-point swing from November of 2024. How did this happen? And what does it mean for Democrats in the 2026 midterms with their party only needing to flip 3 seats in the House in order to gain control? Is there a blue wave? Is there a blue tsunami? Right now, the undercurrent is blue, and each day it seems to become less and less invisible. Gas is now at $4 a gallon, highest it's been in 4 years. It's even higher in some places. Some of my listeners told me they're paying $5 a gallon. We've gotten used to oil being in the triple digits now in terms of a barrel of oil, 101. It closed at $101.50 today. All the polling shows Americans feeling more financially squeezed today than they did before Trump was sworn in. A new Gallup poll showing American workers have a sense of insecurity that is at a record low insecurity for American workers. 49% of Americans saying they have jobs but are struggling to pay their bills. And this is the first time since Gallup asked this question. This is the first time that more American workers say they are struggling than not struggling. Why is it that bad for Republicans right now? Seemingly. You know, who knows, right? He may invoke the Insurrection Act and try to cancel the elections. And this guy, Mike Johnson, will say, yeah, he's right for canceling the election because we'd lose. So if American workers say they're struggling, more American workers say they're struggling than ever before, that's really bad for the Republicans for the midterms. Now, our economy only works for half the people, but you're more likely to find that half whom the economy works for inside our labor force. Workers, people with jobs, also tend to vote more than people who are out of work. We have never seen numbers like this among our workers. And the problem for Trump and his Republicans is we don't have divided government. There's nobody to blame other than Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, because Republicans have the trifecta. They got the House, the Senate, the Oval Office, not to mention the Supreme Court. Trump cannot scapegoat Democrats. Now, in the past, Republican presidents didn't mind divided government. They didn't mind that maybe the Senate or the House was controlled by Democrats because, first off, Republican presidents don't really do anything other than pass massive tax cuts for the rich. They're okay with gridlock. They're okay with divided government because they came to D.C. for the sole purpose of making certain Congress doesn't do anything. The problem is different for Trump because if the House or the Senate or both flip, he's going to be impeached. He's going to be impeached, and then he's going to be impeached, and then he's going to be impeached, and they are going to keep impeaching him. And there will also be congressional oversight. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will be forced to testify and explain why all their peace talks with Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Greenland, the Palestinians, and the Saudis always result in more war and more money going into their investment funds, although there hasn't been an invasion of Greenland. I meant to say Venezuela. 50% of American workers telling Gallup, I'm working, but I need a new job because I'm not getting paid enough, and I don't particularly care for how I'm treating. Only 28% of Americans telling Gallup they're optimistic about being able to find a new job. Well, it was under this cloud of uncertainty, this restlessness and economic pain, not to mention a war in Iran that's not going well, and a president unable to articulate why he attacked and when it's going to end. It was under this Trump miasma that this special election was held Tuesday in Trump's backyard, Palm Beach, Florida. They held an election to pick a new representative to Florida State House of Representatives in a district Trump won by 11 percentage points in 2024. Now, we're talking about the Florida State House, not Washington, D.C.'s Congress. We're talking about the state legislature. This is the deep red Florida House District 87, previously held by Mike Caruso, who stepped aside to become Palm Beach County Clerk. In 2024, Mike Caruso won the district by 19 percentage points. That's how deeply entrenched Trump and the Republican Party were in Palm Beach, Florida, which is home to Mar-a-Lago. This had been a Republican seat for decades. Not anymore. Democrat Emily Gregory pulled off what was unthinkable even for her. Nobody thought she could do this. She said she was shocked. Emily Gregory, a 40-year-old mother of three, a small business owner, married to an Army lieutenant colonel, she beat her Republican challenger, John Maples, personally endorsed by Donald Trump. Emily Gregory, defeated Maples by about 2.5 percentage points. That represents about a 22% swing towards the Democratic Party in that district since November of 2024. This is massive. I've never seen anything like this. I really haven't. I'm going to go over some other numbers. We've never seen anything like this. I'm not saying there's going to be a blue wave in November. I'm not saying there's even going to be an election in November, because if we keep seeing election results like this in the lead up to November, Trump's going to try to invoke the Insurrection Act. So you're looking at Emily Gregory. She defeated John Maples by about 2.5 percentage points. That represents about a 22% swing since November of 2024. Mike Caruso was the Republican who won that district by 19 points in November of 2024. He left that post. He left that the House to become Palm Beach County Clerk, and a special election held 16 months after Trump was swept into office back in 2024. He's only been president for 16 months. There's been a 22-point swing away from him. Within 16 months, one of the deepest red districts in Florida, Palm Beach, Trump's hometown, the town where Mar-a-Lago is, it shifted 22 points into the blue. Into the blue. And it's part of a larger trend that I have never seen before. Since November of 2024, there have been about 115 special elections for state representatives. I'm not talking about Congress or the Senate in Washington, D.C. These are special elections for state legislatures. These are the breadcrumbs voters leave behind to tell you what the 2026 midterms are going to look like in November. Of those 115 special state house elections, now special means somebody died or somebody quit, so they have to have a special election to replace them. Of those 115 special state house elections since November of 2024, Democrats flipped about 12 seats from deep red to blue. The number of seats going blue to red, 0. Then there was, of course, the 2025 off-year election, right? Scheduled for Virginia and New Jersey. Those two states elected new governors, and both the state houses were up for re-election. Not their state senates, just their state houses. New Jersey's governor's mansion stayed blue, and Virginia's governor went from red to blue. All 100 seats in Virginia's House of Delegates were up for grabs in 2025. Democrats went from a slim majority of just 51 seats to 64 seats. And all 80 seats in New Jersey's General Assembly were on the line. Democrats went from a 52-seat majority to 57 seats. And then there's that Texas State Senate district that Donald Trump won by 17 points in 2024. And I think that flipped, 3 months ago? That flipped blue. The takeaway from Tuesday's election in Mar-a-Lago is if Democrats run the way Emily Gregory did, laser focused on inflation, on affordability, high cost of health care, high cost of rent. If Democrats run the way Emily Gregory ran, they're going to start flipping deep red districts. And remember, all they need are 3 to take back the House. See, Trump caters to the rich, but panders to the middle class and the working poor. We're seeing fewer middle class voters because nobody can even define what middle class really means. I mean, can you put a number? Tell me what you have to earn to be middle class. What we're seeing here in the United States as the gap between the wealthy and the poor just grows wider and wider. What we're seeing more and more is no middle class, incredibly rich people, and the working poor. We're beginning to see some Americans self-identify as working poor. It's tough to admit you're part of the working poor. Now, people tend to lie to themselves and they'll say, I'm middle class. So I'm going to talk to Democratic politicians right now, and voters. And this is some tough medicine to swallow, but it's time somebody spoke the truth to you. So here are the facts, and you're not going to like this. A lot of people are going to be angry at me for saying this, but people need to swallow some bitter truths here. So here we go. If you owe more on your credit cards than you have in your savings account, if you owe more on your credit, if the balance on your credit card is more than what you have in your savings account, you are the working poor. Now, I know that hurts for some. You've been taught to frame it differently. It's just credit card debt. It's just student loan debt. It's just an auto loan debt. Americans have been trained to separate the two, like they're a mortgage, but they're not mortgages. Auto loan, student loan, credit card debt are not a mortgage. Mortgage is different. A mortgage is borrowing money for a lifetime investment, hopefully, that over time will hopefully be worth more than what you borrowed. Credit card debt, student loan debt, auto loan debt, that is what is owed with pretty much no upside. So we need politicians to start saying to Americans, if you rent, if you don't own a home, and you owe more money than you have in your savings account, you are not middle class. You're either poor or you're the working poor. Say it with me, because the easier it becomes for Americans to say this, the easier it's going to be to start electing Democratic politicians who will address this truth. So say it with me. If you rent and you owe more on your credit cards or your auto loan or your student loans than you have in your savings account, you're poor. You're poor. Now, that's a fact. Do the math. If you're a renter and you owe more on your credit card and your student loans and your auto loans, than you have in your checking or savings account, you're poor. Even if you're working, you're poor. You're not middle class, you're poor. I want you to think now about the two. It would be nice if Democratic politicians talk this way and stop worrying about the stigma of calling voters. People don't like the stigma of being poor. You're not poor, you were robbed. Since Ronald Reagan became president, there's been the largest theft of national wealth flowing upward in world history. So I want you to think about the $200 billion Iran war supplemental that Trump just asked Congress to pass. Think about the minimum wage, our minimum wage that has been sitting at $7.25 an hour since 2009. Get out your calculator. And what is $7.25 times 40? That's below the poverty line. If you work 40 hours a week at $7.25 an hour, you're living in poverty. Haven't raised it since 2009. They've effectively eliminated the minimum wage. Think about the Biden-era Obamacare subsidies expiring on December 31st, 2025, and now 10% of Americans, according to the Wall Street Journal, since January 1st, little under 3 months, 10% of Americans quit Obamacare because they can no longer afford it, because the Biden-era Obamacare subsidies expired. According to the Wall Street Journal, another 17% of Americans currently on Obamacare now saying they don't expect to have health insurance by the end of the year. And now I want you to take a deep breath and swallow reality. If you rent, if you owe more on your credit cards, your student and auto loans than you have in your savings account, you're working poor or you're poor. If you rent, owe more than you have in the bank, if you owe more than you have in the bank and you're putting money on your credit card to pay your bills, you're poor. Now, the trick the rich play on Americans is they make Americans feel stigmatized, ashamed to admit it to themselves and others that they are, in fact, poor. I believe the Democrat who runs for office and speaks financial truths the way Republicans pretend to about government debt, if Democrats spoke financial truths about personal debt, the way Republicans lie about government debt, I believe that Democratic Party will usher in an era of permanent majorities for the Democratic Party. It's not going to happen until we rid the Democratic Party of millionaires. More Cory Bush and less Ro Khanna. I know everybody loves Ro Khanna. He's worth a couple $100 million. I want to vote for Democrats who have skin in the game. So it's not going to happen. We're not going to get that Democratic Party until voters say, God damn it, I'm poor. State your truth. What is your truth? Don't allow plutocrats to hijack religion, the American dream, and personal responsibility. Don't let them twist it all up So it's a poor person's fault that they're poor. No, poor people are poor because the rich have been stealing from us since 1981. And we allow them to keep stealing from us because too many Americans are too ashamed to say, I'm poor. I'm poor. Now, my parents, currently rotting in hell, my parents came from the greatest generation. So why was Franklin Delano Roosevelt able to usher in an era of government where we took care of each other? How did we end up with this vast and powerful social safety net that Trump and the Republicans pretty much stripping bare? Why did that happen? Because my parents' generation, they weren't ashamed to say, I'm poor. In fact, my parents' generation wore poverty as a badge of honor because everyone was poor back then. And if they weren't poor, they acted like they were. And if they weren't poor, they thought they were poor. You know, during Jimmy Carter's funeral services, which people should watch, his grandson, very touching eulogy, he described Jimmy Carter and his wife, Rosalind, in the kitchen, washing plastic baggies and hanging them out to dry, and everybody laughed. Oh, that generation washing out their baggies. They were laughing kind of like, oh, how we put up with that generation and their values. How ridiculous it looked that an ex-president of the United States and his first lady are still so frugal they wash out their plastic baggies. And while everyone was laughing, I thought, what's so funny? That's a great idea. Wash out your plastic bag. Well, don't have baggies in the first place, but if you have plastic baggies, reuse them. Wash them out. Why waste money in plastic, especially now, given what is going on in the Persian Gulf? Look at what we have to jump through and die for in order to get plastic. So I made the mistake of telling a close friend, you know, I'm going to start washing my baggies. I'm going to honor President Carter and Rosalind, and I'm going to wash my baggies. And my friend said, you're sick. And I'm ashamed to say I'm not washing my baggies because I'm ashamed. I would be ashamed to wash my baggies. That's my generation. Wash your baggies. And your balls. Wash your bag. That's my message. Wash your baggies and your balls. Is anybody still here? Okay. So that's the greatest generation. They used to brag about how poor they were. And they weren't ashamed of poverty. If you rent and you owe more money on your credit cards, auto, and student loans than you have in your checking or savings account, you're the working poor. If you rent and owe more than you have in your checking and savings account, and in order to pay the bills, you still must use your credit card, that's poor. That's poor. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Even if you're betting on college basketball and you're this poor, it's not your fault. In fact, gambling apps are part of the trap to create a more compliant and frightened workforce. If you can keep labor gambling, in debt, on edge, they'll put up with a $7.25 minimum wage. Some of them will. Some of them will. Well, the 2026 midterms are closer than you think, we hope. Here is what Nikki Fried, chairwoman of the Florida Democratic Party, said about Emily Gregory's victory on Tuesday. Floridians are tired of the chaos, corruption, and sky-high prices on everything from groceries to gas and health care. They are voting for trusted leaders like Emily to steady the ship and return common sense, people-centered solutions back to our communities. Nikki Fried, chairwoman of Florida's Democratic Party, from the bottom of my heart, go F yourself. Go F yourself. Common sense solutions and affordability, go F yourself. Medicare for all, raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. That's where you start. What the F does this even mean? This is like out of a Kamala Harris speech. What does it mean? Americans are sick of chaos, sky high prices for health care. No, they want free health care like the rest of the civilized world. Steadying the ship, common sense, people-centered solutions. Nikki Fried, chairwoman of the Florida Democratic Party, you're worse than the Republicans because you're supposed to be helping us. You're worse than the Republicans talking that way. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is desperately trying to pass the SAVE Act, which wouldn't totally eliminate mail-in ballots, but make it much harder not to vote in person. Trump hates mail-in ballots. He calls them a scam and a hoax. He said, quote, no more crooked mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. None. He said you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. He said elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots. He said mail-in voting means mail-in cheating, and we got to do something about it. Well, as I just said, voters in Mar-a-Lago, near Mar-a-Lago, voters were Mar-a-Lago, that's Mar-a-Lardo, by the way, Donald Trump. Voters in voters in Palm Beach, where Mar-a-Lardo is located, they went to the polls in a special election to fill a state house seat, District 87. But you know who didn't go to the polls? Donald Trump. Oh, he voted, but he used a mail-in ballot. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries responding to news that Trump voted by mail, calling Trump a fraud, adding, don't ever believe a word Donald Trump has to say about election integrity. So according to MIT, they study this stuff, in the 2024 presidential election, 37% of all Democrats voted by absentee ballot. 24% of Republicans voted by absentee ballot. So there's a 13-point differential. Elections are won that way. You get rid of mail-in ballots, Republicans have a better chance of winning. So there are many reasons more Democrats use mail-in ballots than Republicans. Chief among them is voter suppression. In reliably red states where Republican governors and state legislatures, they pass voter suppression laws that make it harder and more arduous for people of color, people who are old, people who aren't rich to cast their ballot. It's easier to vote by mail if your Republican-controlled government is cutting funds for your voting precinct, making you wait 6, 12 hours in line. You're going to choose mail-in ballots. Republicans suppress the vote. They claim voter fraud. That's non-existent. But they use voter fraud as a justification to pass laws that suppress the vote. And right now, Trump's ICE agents are doing the work of TSA agents at our nation's airports as the partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security enters its 41st, 42nd day. Steve Bannon said using ICE agents to do the work of TSA is a test run for when Donald Trump announces ICE agents will be patrolling polling stations in reliably blue districts to make certain undocumented immigrants aren't voting. Undocumented immigrants don't vote. There's no record of it. None. Now, there are a lot of voters who are American citizens who right now, because of ICE, are afraid to walk the streets. American citizens. They avoid ICE agents and Border Patrol officers because ICE agents and Border Patrol officers right now are notorious for hassling them. And why are they hassling these voters, these American citizens? Because those voters, those American citizens, aren't white. And they speak perhaps with an accent. Or they're just not white. Let me ask you, are you going to vote in person? Imagine not being white. Are you going to vote in person if you run the risk of getting harassed or possibly detained by an ICE agent, even if you're an American citizen? You want to get detained by an ICE agent? You want to be handcuffed? You want to sit chained to a cell for 6 hours? Do you want to go through that? Picture yourself locked in a closet for 30 minutes. That's what jail is like, or trapped on an elevator. Everybody should spend an hour in holdup, in lockup, just to see what it's like. How many Americans aren't going to vote because ICE agents are snooping and they're intimidating, and they go, I don't want to spend 6 hours in lockup. This POS, Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin, was sworn in as the new Director of Homeland Security. ICE answers to this POS. He cleared the Senate along party lines by a vote of 54 to 45. Rand Paul joined Democrats in voting against him. Pennsylvania's John Fetterman and New Mexico's Martin Heinrich, both Democrats, joined Republicans voting for Mullin. Markwayne Mullin is one of the most active stock traders in the Senate. As the head of Homeland Security, he owns shares in companies that do business with the agency he oversees, with the agency that awards contracts to the companies he owns stock in. Raytheon, now known as RTX, and several other businesses that assist ICE and Border Patrol in the monitoring and apprehension of immigrants. Markwayne Mullin owns stock in those companies. Never thought, well, maybe I should sell it. No, holding on to the stock. This POS also received $1.8 million in COVID loans, despite being a multimillionaire. Those loans forgiven. So he got $1.8 million from the government during COVID, didn't pay him back. He was also recently accused of stolen valor, claiming this month during interviews on Fox News that he smelled and tasted war. Never served in our military. Then again, neither is Donald Trump, but that hasn't stopped Trump from comparing himself this week to Winston Churchill. And you know what? He's right. Donald Trump does remind me of Winston Churchill right after the Battle of Gallipoli. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for finding me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Share this with people who you think need to hear this. and hit the notification bell. I keep irregular hours. So thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. If I made any mistakes, leave a comment. I read all your comments. I issue corrections. We triple check, or I triple check, but sometimes I get things wrong. Subscribe to my newsletter. Let's keep going. Let's keep moving.